Alexis, please kick it off. Intro yourself. And
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you both. And as you both know, my name is Alexis Jenkins. I am the director of client onboarding for a small startup in New York City called Loyal Snap. Primarily, our job is to handle the marketing, email, and text automation for fitness studios all across the world. So it's a big job. I've been in startups for nearly a decade now. And my role in startups, it's primarily operations, customer experience, but where I've landed consistently is just building a culture and an awareness in these companies that are typically run by white males or or white interparts, and just trying to figure out how to be more inclusive. And for about a year, I actually had the privilege of starting my own company with one of my best friends called Burgundy Fox. And we are a e-commerce company. We do lingerie for women of all sizes, and our goal was to be an inclusive space because growing up, we didn't get to see women that looked like us, modeling intimate apparel, and we wanted to change that. So I'm very lucky and privileged to have this opportunity to speak with you guys. And I have a little rugrat myself. He's almost 2 years old, Xavier, and he is nuts and good and active and all of the things. But, my husband and I are an interracial couple, and we really work hard in letting him understand, even at this age, his skin is beautiful, he is beautiful, and he's worth something. So I again appreciate this time.
Well, I'm Shay. Shay Monet is my middle name. Everyone always asks, but that is my brand that I'm currently still building. I'm a mom of three. Ashton is 5, Aubrey is turning 4 next week, and then Avery is 2. And I run a blog, obviously self-titled, and I share lifestyle, home, travel, everything about my kids. I'm pretty much an open book. And then I'm also a part of Influencing in Color with 3 of my other friends, where we have been on the mission to basically make sure that brands are inclusive and that women of color have a seat at the table, and that we get partnerships, and that we not only get partnerships, but we get ongoing partnerships, and we get paid what we're worth. And so that is kind of our mission at Influencing in Color. And it's been a journey in both worlds, but I'm excited to be here and keep the conversation going. I think this is a first step for many of brands to just realize, like, hey, we haven't always gotten it right. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's talk to people that do understand and know. And so I do applaud you guys for that and for letting me join today. I'm really excited.
Thank you. We're so excited to have you guys.
All my kids are little. But with my son, who is 5, he's witnessed my husband being stopped by the police several times, and cops followed my husband and him home to our driveway. And so that is kind of what sparked in me, like, okay, this is a conversation that I need to have, because he's now asking questions. And then also, like, I kind of started when he went to school, which he went when he was 4, because I knew that I used to be the only Black girl in my class. So I knew how that felt. And I never wanted him to experience that. So I just made it very clear to him, like, hey, you are handsome. You are a handsome Black man. You are a handsome Black boy. But everyone in your class isn't going to look like you. And you have to respect everybody, no matter where they come from, if their parents are different, even if they have 2 moms or 2 dads. Like, we have to love and respect everyone, even if we don't agree with things that they do. It's all about love and understanding. And in a simple form for a 4-year-old, is all about just teaching them how to love people for who they are, And I think that's step one. And then step two is when my son do see my husband being obviously discriminated against, like I have to explain to him why. Dad was pulled over. He wasn't speeding. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but this is why. But all cops are not bad cops, but this particular cop is picking on dad. And I just relate it back to school. When you're at school, you don't want someone to pick on you just because you may look different. Because then that becomes a form of bullying. And I just try to make sure I relate it to something that they can understand in their little tiny brains without overwhelming them. Alexis, I'll let you.
No, I agree with everything you say. And look, I'll be frank, we don't have the privilege of waiting to have a conversation, right? Once we let our child out of our bubble of our homes and our own insular communities, we have to prepare them. So I think just as much as we have to prepare our children, you're preparing yours and saying, hey, it's the first day of school. This is really exciting. And I bet you a lot of kids in your class are nervous too. Not everyone's going to look the same. Not everyone's going to like the same toys, like the same thing, but just have fun with people, get to know that kid. And I think that's where the conversations have to happen in white homes. It's not waiting until an incident happens. It's starting at its very beginning. Once you let them leave your door, because when they're conscious about being okay with seeing people that look different from them, then real progress gets to be made, because they're then advocates and not bullies. And that's what you're hoping. We all hope our children will step up to bullies, and we have to give them the tools to do that.
One thing that I think too as parents, and what I love about certain schools is like they let the kids pick, like on the first day of school, just like all the kids are there and just let them pick where they want to sit, and you'll see how they're not looking at color or race. They're just like, I'm going to sit here. And then another kid's like, I'm going to sit here. And like, oh my God, your bow is so pretty. I loved her bow. I'm going to, like it's so natural and it's so organic and it's filled with love and like just decisions that has nothing to do with race. But I feel like sometimes when teachers pick it out, it's kind of like a thought process behind it, which may not always be, the right thing. And especially I think at that age, and I think it's good for them to be able to play with everybody, move around, even if they sit in the same place. Like maybe next week, guess what? We're going to sit by different people today. But those are things that we can do during parent-teacher conferences and talking to our teachers and expressing those ideas, so that it's always like, love spread to everybody, because there's always going to be that one kid or that one person that may not feel that love, and they may not be getting it at home either. So they may be a little standoffish.
And Shay, you mentioned that you were one of the only Black kids growing up in school. Do you feel like systems within schools have changed for the better? That's one question. And two, when was your first memory of really seeing or witnessing racism and possibly understand what your parents might have already been trying to educate you about?
So my parents put me in private school because they didn't want me to go to public school and kind of live and see the things they want. They were trying to have, provide a better life for me. So that's why I went to private school. And with that, I ended up being like the one only Black girl for a long time. And then I remember, I'll never forget, my friend Phoebe came, and it was like two of us, and then her siblings, I'm like, yay. But what really hit home for me was at that age, obviously I could see like I'm the only Black person here, like no one understands me. But for me, it was when we went on a field trip, and we were a small private school, so like we didn't have like a school bus, and everyone had to ride with our parents, and everyone wanted to ride with my parents. And I'm like, why does everybody want to ride with me? And the girl says, because your parents let you listen to rap music and we can't listen to that. And I was like, okay, like, I was little, I'm like, okay, like to me, like we just listened to like R&B, like my parents were like, like just different songs, and that was just part of me. I didn't realize that, they never even got to listen to like Black people music in their home. And so they thought that maybe riding in the car with me, they'll be able to get to listen to different type of music. And I remember having the conversation with my mom, like when the field trip was over and we're driving home, and I'm like, Mom, everyone went to ride with us because of the music. And she's like, that's because, baby, we got soul in our music.
I love that.
Like, we have soul, and you gotta spread that love and that soul to everybody. So, sing the songs that you want to sing and spread the love, but she never put anyone down. She just brought it back to like soul. And so I just always, kept that in my mind, that I didn't know what was going on at the time, but now I get it. You know what I mean? And so it was hard. Even flip side of that, I think, because I would go to school and I'm like the only Black girl. And then I would go home back to my family and my cousins and everyone is Black. And so I became, the Oreo of the family, or the token Black girl that, maybe spoke proper. And my family didn't understand that, and why my mom and dad were, making me go to this school. And on the flip side, I was at school all day with people that don't look like me. So I'm trying to fit into their culture and what they do, which maybe changed my dialect, or maybe changed certain things and behaviors that I would normally do at home. So I think I was like two different kids, juggling it all. And now I'm like, why did I do that? I should have just been myself,
Right.
Our experience is not all Black people's experience, right? Let's make that clear. We're speaking from our own individual spots, but we also have a responsibility in proper representation, right? I mean, I wasn't allowed to wear short shorts because Black women's bodies are already, marginalized, and they're looked at very differently than a white girl's body. So I had to dress proper. And this is at 9, it's hot. I just wanted to wear shorts, but certain shorts wouldn't work on my body, right? Those are just the facts. So it's this constant working towards safety and protection of our Black families, while allowing our kids to just be kids. And that's a really, really difficult thing to balance, because yes, he can be bouncing up and down and enjoying just like his counterparts, but he could be the first to get chastised by his teacher, and he won't understand why. Like, he didn't start it, right? It can be very difficult, but that's the reality.
I wanted to ask, so I know your oldest, Shay, you said Ashton is 5. And do you feel like it has changed, since you've grown up and stuff? Like, do you feel that white parents and white children are doing a better job of integrating you into society and making play dates? Because I think something that, and granted, I do believe I was raised very well, but I think growing up, I didn't have a lot of interaction with Black kids, and I regret that. And I wish that, my parents and I had done a better job of just really trying to mix up who I was hanging out with, and kind of seeking out those play dates with other kids. So I'm curious if that's changed, or your perspective on that.
For me, I don't think it's changed at all, because I think that parents, it's all about who they relate to. And so a lot of times, us as being Black people don't relate to us or get the chance to relate to us, or anything like that. So I don't see the change. Like, my son's friend is a little African American boy. His mom works at the school. So like, me and her, like this, like I'm texting her, making sure everything's okay, and like, cause she's able to be there and see everything. So but no, I don't think it has changed at all. My daughter is one of 2 in her ballet class, and no one really talks to me when I go take her to ballet. No one asks how Aubrey's doing, or Aubrey did so good today. Like, there's just not any communication. It's just like when you get older and you go to lunch and all the Black kids sit together and all the white kids sit together. It's just about who you're comfortable with. And I think that we, as both races, how to make each other feel comfortable and okay speaking with another race. And I think that goes both ways. I have to make sure that my son is okay sitting at a table with a little white boy and being able to have a conversation, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same way as white kids should be okay with sitting at the lunch table or inviting a black kid to sit with them. It works both ways, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we still have a very long way to go.
And I don't think anyone really has the answers to that, unfortunately, but how can we do a better job as white people to help educate our children, the rising generation? It's to me, it's that, the difference between systematic racism and personal racism, and how those personal racisms ultimately lead up to that systematic racism. So I feel like if we can remove those biases, like you mentioned, if a black boy was standing on the chair and acting out, he would be targeted, and that's just a stereotype. How do we eradicate that?
Well, I would answer that question with a question, and what do you think your own? And that would be, joining clubs. When you see a black person, I used to be a member of the Soho House in New York, and for me, I would very nice.
I'm a member too.
I would, me and fellow black people would, we see each other. Hey, how's it going? You always have a conversation. If you notice, when black people walk past one another, it's a hey, what's up? Because we see each other. And so we know, I see you, you see me, it's going to be all kosher here today. But if you're there at Soho House or at the Wing, do you engage? Or do you stay in your bubble? And if you are a person that stays in your bubble, then your children are going to follow those actions because you're leading them, right? So instead, hey, do you mind if I share this table with you? Great. I'm, Tara.
Yeah.
Started off that way, right? Like there's no magic formula. It's just checking yourself and seeing, well, what are the actions that I typically do? And then this is what's going to be the reality. It's pushing you out of your comfort zone. You're going to, feel a little nervous. Your heart's going to patter, not because, you're a racist. It's because you're going to go try to make a new friend, and making new friends are hard, right? But like you're consciously trying to start a relationship with a person of color, a black person in particular. And so the onus is on you to put yourself out there to accept that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think, even if some of us live in primarily white neighborhoods or grew up in primarily white neighborhoods, it's joining clubs or, initiatives like that, so that you befriend black people, other people of color, and invite them into your home and allow your children to see that we're all friends. This is completely normal. And then possibly they won't even think twice about joining the lunch table with a black person, because they feel like they relate already because their parents have given them that example.
You're showing it, and you see it. Your nieces and your nephews, they're going to see you doing that, and kids are watching all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
I think it's even too, just as simple as when you go to the grocery store, and talking to whoever, no matter who they are, making conversations and like, oh my God, I like that milk too, just so that they can see like, oh, my mom can spark a conversation with anybody. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm so outgoing. My husband always be like, Shay, can you just be quiet so we can go? I can spark a conversation with anybody, but I got that from my dad. Like my dad just enjoys people no matter who they are. So that's just like the way I am. So I try to make sure my kids have that same, even though my middle one is like the shyest of them all. Like she doesn't talk to nobody. She don't even care who they are. But I try to make it where, it's okay to have conversations with people and meet new people and go up to people and say hi. I mean, I know it's scary when they're kids, but like if they see me engaging in conversation with someone, like and they have a kid, it's okay for them to engage with the kid while I'm talking to the mom, like that type of thing.
I know, Alexis, your son might be too young to, be even aware of what's going on in the world right now. But Shay, are you guys, letting the news on TV in front of your children, or are they aware that there's really an enormous movement going on right now in the right direction? But I'm curious kind of what all do you allow for them to be exposed to, and how do you make that decision?
Yeah, I definitely because I wanted to go protesting, but I'm still afraid of Corona. So we decided that we are supporting in different ways. But absolutely, I let them see the protest. Like that protesting has been going on like grandparents to grandparents to grandparents. They've been fighting for a very long time. So this is nothing new. So I don't want to shelter them from that. I want them to understand why people are protesting. So I asked my son, I was like, hey, do you want to go protest just random? And he's like, no, mommy. And I'm like, why? And he was like, because those cops are being mean to those people and they're hitting them. And I said, okay, so what do you think that we can do? And he says, well, we should go give them some water. He was talking about like, go give the cops some water. Just him being genuine, he's like, that'll make them happy because they're hot. In his head, he's like, they're upset because it's hot outside. And when he goes outside and he gets all sweaty and frustrated is because he's hot and he needs water. So that's how he kind of like, and I just played with that. Like, well, yeah, everyone out there is frustrated. Everyone out there is hot. Everyone's out there right now for a good mission and a good cause, but it's how you let your anger get to you. So if we were out there, we would be out there marching. We could make really cool signs. We could have fun. We can stand for a good cause. But when it comes to something that is tension, we have to know how to walk away and go get our sip of water. And he's like, oh, okay. Like I just always try to relate things back and I let them drive the conversation, the answer. So I know how to make it into what they're thinking and bring it back to their level. Because I could say all these crazy things and he would never understand. And then I say, like great grandma, like she used to be out there, protesting. And he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can do that. I'm like, but we're not going. But, but it's something that, a conversation.
Curious, recently I ordered a bunch of books on Amazon that for my daughter that I probably won't be able to read to her for a while because she's, going to be an infant. But outside of books and just, trying to speak to them, what do you think about showing them some of these videos that have emerged on social media? Like, I'm curious, what kind of resources would you guys just recommend that will have a lasting impact?
Using any of your persons of colors, friends that you have, even family members that you may have that are a different race, using them as an example, having them talk to your child, with your experience. I have a goddaughter who is white. Well, actually, she's half white, half Mexican, but she passes as white, so most people would just assume that to be. And so she and I are going on a walk this weekend, and we're just going to talk about it because she's got questions, and her and her mom have been talking about it, and she's like, Lex, I think she needs to hear your voice. I think she needs to hear your experiences, and I'm more than happy to answer any and all of her questions because she's at least also vocalizing that she's ready. And so her mom is taking her lead in, okay, this is what we're going to do.
I think even when they get a little older too, because school doesn't teach. I mean, we learn Martin Luther King and what happened there. So taking it a step further and letting them watch, different movies that has to deal with racism. I know this weekend we watched the one with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. I think it's Mercy or something. But it brought me to tears, but it was so true and relatable, and it was a true story. And I think true stories is what is the most moving because you can say this really happened, and you don't want this to happen to any of your family, any of your friends, any of your people at church or wherever, the kids congregate. Like you wouldn't want that to happen. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, and I don't want to tell the movie, but the pivotal part of the movie is when a white person had to stand up and say, you know what, he didn't do that. Mm-hmm. And that is what made the difference in the change, because we can't do this by ourselves. Like we have to have you guys' help. And so it takes standing up when you see something wrong. It takes standing up even at work when you're like, hey, like I've been here 2 years and we have no representation. Like this is more than a conversation at this point. This is like a call to action, a movement that needs to happen yesterday. And what are our action steps to make that happen? And so that you're having the voice and you are making, demanding that change. Because if no one else that looks like me works there, then who's going to demand that change? And if there's only one, that's a scary feeling to go to your boss and be like, hey, because you're already the minority and you don't want to lose your job for something like that. So I just feel like for you guys, just stepping up in whatever you do, work, church, play, friends, family, and using your voice and speaking up and holding people accountable and being okay with exiting out of situations with people who don't want to change.
Right.
Which is hard, but I mean, it's, reality.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of that, obviously you both are pretty active on social media, and so many brands are taking stances on committing, more of their content and partnerships to feature Black people, people of color. How now, younger generations will be adopting Instagram much earlier than us. How do you see that playing a toll in I guess education?
I think I will believe it when I see it.
I was going to say the same thing.
I think right now this feels very trendy for a lot of brands. This feels very the right thing to do. But this isn't a new conversation. This is not a new thing that's happening in this country, and so I'm very curious to see. I'm making a stance for myself personally, and really probably pulling away a lot of my dollars in a lot of different brands that I've been pulling in. I mean, my own experience in shopping and retail and e-commerce has been very complicated because I am a Black woman with means, so I can go to very nice stores, but I'm followed. But I am told, horrible things just because I am Black. I had an experience at Bloomingdale's. It was only a couple of months ago. And I was buying a lot of stuff because I had a lot of weddings, as one does. And, the sales associate made it a point to say, well, you're just going to return this anyway. I know what you people do. And it was like and I froze. And then I thought, do I leave this here or do I show her like I can afford this and I'm not going to return? Like, what do I do? And all this decision has to be made in seconds, right? I can't mull it over. I can't do anything. So I have to make that decision in seconds, not cause a scene, because then if and when security comes, they are yoking my Black ass, pardon my French, out of the store. So I have to keep calm, make the decision quickly. And I come home and I'm telling my husband and I'm crying and I'm like, I'm never going to shop there again. I can't even return. I don't even want these clothes now. They feel dirty and not useful. And, that very next day, he was picking our son up from daycare and he drove to Bloomingdale's and got the manager and laid into her. And it was so nice to have someone fight for me because I'm always fighting. And it was much more pivotal because he's white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and he's got this baby on his hip. Like, do you know what you just did? And it was very moving. And the manager called me personally and wrote me a letter, and but I haven't shopped there since. So that's why I say let's see what happens. I'd like to see more representation in the corporate setting, not just in the stores, because you're fine for us to work in the stores, but you don't want us to make the big decisions. I got a problem with that. I've got a big, big problem with that. You want us to shop in your stores, but you won't have us in your tables and in your corporate rooms. I've got a problem with that. So I think for a lot of Black Americans, we are some of the best consumers in this world. And we put the mark on what is cool and what is not. And if we continue to not see change from these major brands, our dollars will be taken away. These brands will feel the repercussion. And maybe that will take enough. But I hope this is really the momentum that these brands need to do to make these changes, and to make these changes with strategy and a method in place. Don't just be reactionary. You know, it's not like running to an HBCU and saying, "Hey, we're hiring." There's more to diversity than that, right? You're talking to two Black women right now that were in pretty privileged settings, right? That says something. So diversity runs the gamut. But that's my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
I feel the same exact way. I feel like we've been a checkbox. So for us, is it still that? When the hype goes down, and like I told my husband, I was like, I will see this time next year what people Instagram feeds look like, what their websites look like, what I've worked with several brands and flown out with them and did ad campaigns with them. And I may be like the only Black girl. So, like I want to see like, why can't it be all Black girls? Why can't the whole campaign be all people of color with all shapes and sizes? Why can't it be, like, why does it always have to be like, okay, make sure we get a Black girl in there because they're going to be angry if we don't, and they're going to say something, they may not buy something. Like, why does it have to be that way? Why can't it be like, oh my God, that is 5 beautiful Black girls, those models, I want all 5 of them, and then that's the budget and we're done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when I start to see things like that happening where race is taken out of it and a model is a model and she gets the same job, and not only the same job, but paid the same, is when I will feel like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And right now, I honestly like, and not to say like, because I'm working with brands behind the scenes on certain things. And so I know that brands have been working on things. And just because they don't publicize and show doesn't mean they're not doing anything. But however, in the marketing world, when I see that change is when I can be like, okay. And that change will only happen when we are allowed a seat at the table in the corporate atmosphere. And not just hiring someone to consult and come in and say, this is how you should run your company and be more aware of Black people. And not like that. Like, who's actually sitting at the table every Monday at the board meeting and have a voice?
Right. You're going to get really overwhelmed. Yeah. You're also going to feel really uncomfortable. Lean into that when you're talking with your children, when you're talking with your coworkers, when you're talking with your family members. Why? Because then there's going to be this light bulb moment and you'll realize, okay, that's why and how I got here. Here's how I can plan and move forward to do better, or tweak it, or change, whatever the case is. But I think I think brands are in a very precarious situation right now, where for a lot of people right now, influencers and celebrities, old tweets and Instagram posts are bubbling up, and brands are dropping all of these individuals. And I'm not really a supporter of the cancel culture, because I think that sends the wrong lesson. I think some cancellations need to happen by but if the person has shown growth, if the person is showing significant change, to cancel that person means, okay, well then I'm ignoring all the growth that just happened, right? I don't particularly think that's fair. I wouldn't want that done to me. I wouldn't want that done to my white counterparts either. But the point is that you're going to make mistakes. Don't be reactionary when making those mistakes. Sit with it. Be uncomfortable, and then approach it. Because when you're clear-headed, and when you don't tweet back or comment back in anger, you're actually coming from a more authentic place, and you'll probably have a better plan as opposed to just responding. That's what I always recommend to companies that I work with.